And into this field of confusion and man-hatred steps guys like Andrew Tate and others, quickly earning an enormous following of young men who understandably flock to somebody who has a message that embraces masculinity rather than treating it like a disease. Andrew Tate, very often good at identifying the problems in our culture and deserves credit for speaking up in defense of masculinity rather than denigrating it and calling for its eradication, essentially. But in my view, he misses the mark when it comes to the remedy. He seems to basically understand the disease, but he doesn't have the right prescription for it, or at least the full prescription.
What's up, guys? VinceDao here. Be sure to like and subscribe if you are new. So this week, Matt Walsh put out a video called Matt Walsh Responds to Andrew Tate Supporters. Now, I thought he gave a pretty fair and balanced take that I totally agree with. And I'm happy to say that because I think a lot of our fellow conservatives just don't get it on the Andrew Tate question. On one hand, you have people who are basically just outraged feminists about it. Like, oh, he's a misogynist, he's a bigot, he's such a sexist, disgusting person. And it's like, really? Are we leftists now? We're going to talk like the Washington Post or the SPLC? Get a grip, seriously. And I'm glad to see that Matt Walsh didn't do that. He did not play that game. And I was also glad to see that he gave Andrew Tate credit where it's due. And I think there's a lot of people in the Christian sphere specifically who are unwilling to do that whatsoever. What do I mean by that? Well, I've seen a lot of Christian conservatives lately just completely dunking on Andrew Tate, pointing out, well, he's not Christian, he's not a biblical role model, therefore he has no utility to us and we must disavow him totally. And I used to kind of be in this camp myself, if I'll be honest, because I agree. He's not a biblical role model. He is not an ideal leader for young men. But the past few months, the more that I listened to him, gave him a fair shot, and the more specifically that I observed young men genuinely breaking the feminist conditioning, the more that I realized that, flaws and all, there was a utility to Andrew Tate. Because I think in a world where our men have become so feminized, so indoctrinated with feminist ideology from birth, there does need to be someone to come in with a battering ram and just break the glass, break the conditioning. Literally, someone has to break the matrix, and I think that's what Andrew Tate has done for a lot of young men, and I think that's a start. I get it. He's not Christian. I get it. It would be better if Vodi Bakum or Taylor Marshall or whoever your favorite internet teacher filled that role. But they're not. And they arguably could never reach his level of influence so long as our society is as secular as it is. You need gateways, you need bridge points, and I think that's what Andrew Tate is. I'm not saying don't disagree with him from a biblical perspective, because I've done that publicly, but I'm also saying recognize the genuine utility he serves, acknowledge that many of the controversial things he says are true, instead of just bashing his very existence. Because I will say this, as someone who grew up in secular youth culture, I would not be Christian today if Ben Shapiro and like classical liberalism didn't make me start asking questions about God that eventually led me to this point. And Ben Shapiro is not Christian. Thomas Jefferson, most of the classical liberals were not Christian. And yet God used people like that in my life to bring me to the truth. It was not a straight line, for me at least. It was a process that took several years. And I first had to have the conditioning of modern culture shattered before I was open to anything. And I'm sure a lot of converts would say the same thing. And so if a lot of us were brought in by people like Shapiro, Peterson, who are we to say that God isn't using Andrew Tate in a lot of people's lives to eventually lead them to the truth? Because I think he absolutely is. Think about it. Who is more open, do you think, to hearing the gospel? A totally secular feminist or a Tate supporter who's at least awake enough to break those first chains? Of course, it's the latter, and I think you'll start to see that a few years down the road. And obviously, if nothing else, the system feels threatened by him. And, you know, I'm not here to comment on the validity of the allegations because I don't know, but clearly, true or false, the system feels threatened by him in some way because we know they don't actually care about human trafficking, right? They turn a blind eye to that daily, but they're after him because he threatens their power. A generation of men who are not subservient to feminism threatens their power. So getting back to Matt Walsh, he acknowledged this. Instead of like just shaming Andrew Tate supporters, instead of disregarding the validity of anything he had to say, he stated that Andrew Tate correctly diagnoses the problems in society, but doesn't always have the right solution. And what Walsh basically said is that, yes, many modern women are awful, subversive people. Yes, feminism has ruined both men and women, but the true solution, the truly manly thing to do isn't living the playboy lifestyle. It's to raise a family and to be a dutiful, honorable, masculine husband and father. And that's how you truly break the matrix. That's how you truly rebel against the system. That's basically what he said, and I couldn't agree more. I'll play some of it, not all of it, because I don't want to get copyrighted, but here you go.
But a life of hedonism and materialism and luxurious wealth, remaining unmarried while sleeping with dozens of different women and so on, is not the ideal to strive towards. Rather, what men are called to and created for, and the only sort of life that will be truly happy, that they'll find true happiness and joy in, is a life of service as protector and provider. Men are called to be husbands and fathers, to be leaders of their families. If there's any saving our civilization at this point, this is how it will be done. It's not going to be saved by influencers who are sitting in front of cameras, whether the guy in front of the camera is Andrew Tate or me or anyone else. It'll be saved through the formation and preservation of strong, intact, loving, and well-led families.
So I think the top comment on the video put it quite well. It says, I like how he doesn't call Andrew a misogynist, but says he understands the problem and that he embraces masculinity, just that his solution is not complete. I like that he also doesn't degrade others, but educates men on true masculinity. 100% agree. Well said. And I would also say that the true ideal of masculinity can be found in the Bible. But like I said, I think that's a process for getting a lot of people there, and we shouldn't disregard forces and maybe the people that God uses to do that. So to the Christians out there, I do not think we should be so combative toward his supporters all the time. I think we should instead, to an extent, be grateful that they have broken the conditioning and understand what the Andrew Tate fan base now is a bunch of young men who are seeking answers. And if you know those answers, if we know those answers, then we are now in a favorable position to share those answers thanks to Andrew Tate. As weird or maybe crazy as it sounds. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe if you are new. And until next time, folks, Alpha moves only. God bless and peace.